Booktube. I'm here with another review for the Hillary Weston Writers Trust Prize for Nonfiction, the nominees for the 2020 prize. Today I will be talking about Shame on Me by Tessa McWatt. This is subtitled An Anatomy of Race and Belonging. So, this book is kind of hard to summarize. Tessa McWatt is from Guyana, and her family history really reflects that. Her ancestors are Chinese, Scottish, English, French, Portuguese, Indian, African, and Arawak, which is an indigenous tribe of the Caribbean. This book is an examination of McWatt's racial makeup, the history behind those races, especially in regards to how they immigrated to Guyana forcefully or by choice, and how white people treated others based on their race in regards to eugenics and slavery and, racism. It's a mixture of memoir, concentrating on McWatt's personal identity with her racial makeup, science and world history in regards to race, and family history. One thing I really loved about reading this is how she connects world history with personal identity, and how things may or may not have changed in our present world. In each chapter she also ties in different books and authors into her examination of race. The most memorable one to me was the character of Bertha Mason from Jane Eyre, and how Gothic literature used racist terms to describe something or someone that was frightening. They talk about Bertha's lips being, swollen and big, and that was a frightening feature on her, but that is a normal feature on some races. The mingling of science and literature and history and memoir make this really interesting to read and not boring, as all the different elements kind of work together to create a more cohesive story. There was a lot of self-reflection of examining her own set of privileges, and this is what a memoir should do. It wasn't all positive. She doesn't shy away from talking about how her Scottish ancestors were overseers on the plantation, or how her grandmother was able to work in a bank because she was Chinese and not black like her grandchildren. Alongside how she knows nothing about her African great-grandmother because she was a slave, or her Indian ancestor who was brought over as an indentured servant. And also talking about herself and her own relation with race. It's kind of hard to talk about this because it's not a very straightforward story about race. It questions everything about race, including history, DNA makeup, intersectionality, and eventually she moves along from asking the question, what am I, to who am I? And it's a great reflection of reality because race is not just a straightforward and simple topic. There are so many elements that constructed this idea of race, and it takes time and reflection and research to examine it as closely as McWatt does. And what she does in this book is really fascinating. Because she breaks it down like an experiment, like an academic paper. It doesn't read like academia. It's just structured like that. So she comes up with some hypotheses, her experiment, and her analysis, where she then goes on to examine race in regards to her anatomy, her nose, lips, eyes, hair, her butt, her bones, skin, blood, those things that make up a person, but have also been historically used to racialize people and to pit them into certain categories. And her being so mixed race, thinking about how these things affect her, and it's fascinating. As you can see, I've tabbed so much in this book because it taught me so much about history, about looking at history critically too. There's one point she talks about Jungian psychology. She goes to see a therapist, and the words that Jung used, dark and shadow, she's like, those are really racialized terms. We have to think of those critically, especially if you're talking to someone of color and using those terms, right? It was just fascinating the way that she turned a critical lens on everything, including herself. And I want to read a quote. I oppose the treatment of people as shadow, oppose neglect, oppose the lowest price for the lowest labor, oppose coercion and manipulation, oppose exploitation, oppose cages and shackles and shantytowns and ghettos and the borders of race-making. If white is a state of mind that allows the plantation to flourish, with black as its opposites, my politics define my color. And I thought that was just a very powerful statement, including all the things that happen in world history into how we treat people back then and now. Yeah, I definitely suggest that you pick up Shame on Me by Tessa McWatt.